listening to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
This is the SexPharmD podcast with your host, Dr. Nadia Archambault, licensed clinical pharmacist and certified sex therapist. With a focus on women's sexual health and wellness, Dr. A is here to cover important health topics and answer all of your questions about subjects that can be applied to pharmacy practice. And now, here's Dr. A.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Pharmacy Podcast Network's SexPharmD. I am very excited for our guest today, Dr. Swathi Varanasi. We call her Dr. Swathi for short. Love it. Welcome, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. This is my first official appearance on another, podcast show. So I love that.
Yes, and we're very happy to have you here. So just a little about our guest here. Dr. Swathi is a bilingual pharmacist. What other languages do you speak?
Spanish is the other one that I use in a medical context. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. That's so important. That's great. So she specializes in integrative and preventative health. She has definitely paved the way for other healthcare professionals to pursue non-traditional career paths, which is so amazing. Can't wait to talk about your journey. She's created a postdoctoral training program, programs plural, I should say, industry internships and online courses. She's not only a speaker, she's an author and co-founder of the international award-winning plant-based wellness and skincare brand, Element Apothec. Mm-hmm. And she is one of the newest hosts to join the Pharmacy Podcast Network. Also, we're really happy to have her here. And her show is called the Element Apothec Show. So welcome. And
thank you.
Tell us a little bit about what the show is going to be too. I'm sure our listeners will be excited to click on that one.
Definitely. Yeah. So the show is really an answer to a lot of practitioners' questions, a lot of providers' questions, a lot of, students' questions about, is there really research behind botanicals? Is there really research behind cannabinoids? So it's going to be delving into a lot of the studies that have actually been done and kind of my evaluation and clinical judgment on a lot of these studies. And then, whether I recommend this botanical or this herb or this particular component for a certain, whether it's disease state or for optimizing wellness. So that's my overall intention with it, is to be engaging and fun and educational, while still, providing insight and something that I don't really see a lot of people talking about.
Yeah. No. And, there's so many things about plant-based and diets and everything else, but I don't think there's a lot of science to back it up. A lot of people will say things, but there's not a lot backing it up. So I love what your approach and how you've really taken a deep dive into what's working. Mm-hmm. I think that's really great. So as far as your background, what made you take this leap of faith, I guess I would call it, and just kind of go into something completely different and non-traditional versus just working the bench in retail?
Definitely. So, initially, I grew up around Ayurveda and this concept that herbs could be potentially a part of the healing process. But, my dad was a supplement formulator and my mom was a nurse. So very much seeped in this idea of conventional medicine from the get-go, with this hint of herbal medicine in the background, I guess, and knew from a young age that I wanted to do something in healthcare. That was pretty clear to me. I knew that was a way that I could make an impact. And I was fascinated by so many of the different science classes I took. So at that point, I was like, okay, I want to do something in healthcare. And as I looked at all the different potential options within healthcare, I, just looking at the people that I knew growing up, I knew pharmacists that, were entrepreneurs. They owned their own pharmacies. They called all the shots. And to me, that was exciting. But I also knew people who kind of worked on the industry side, and they did things like marketing and business development and, a lot of other like things that maybe a healthcare professional, a conventional one, wouldn't think of. But to me, the way I grew up seeing pharmacy was like this very versatile option. So I picked that initially thinking, okay, I'll definitely do, one of those things that I knew about, not really knowing about the more conventional side of pharmacy, which is why most people, and especially most people in my graduating class and most graduating classes, I would argue, know the pharmacist behind the counter. So that's what excited them to go to pharmacy school. So I was pretty much like one of the only people from the beginning that was like, I know I want to be a pharmacist. I know that they have so many transferable skills. I know that I can do so many things with this degree, but I wasn't like set on being the pharmacist behind the bench, even from like the first day of pharmacy school or even like the white coat ceremony. So I guess I approached it from a different standpoint of like, this is an incredible stepping stone to get to, like all these possible options and paths that a pharmacist can pave. So then as I went through pharmacy school, I was the only pharmacist the only pharmacy student, I suppose, by the time I graduated, who had never worked in a pharmacy, because I knew that was just something I didn't want to do. Mm-hmm. So I was out, interning for medical device startups and doing clinical research, doing bench research, doing volunteer work, and really trying to figure out where I had my place in pharmacy. So it was really important to me that by the time I got to my APPE schedule, that I cultivated my list to be like all the options that looked remotely interesting to me. Well, like within the, conventional realm of being a pharmacist, or maybe even conventional, I suppose at that point, because I found a mentor out in LA, which is, after I finished pharmacy school in Charleston, South Carolina, I moved out to LA to train with her, but it all started with this APPE rotation and networking and finding her and asking if there was a way that I could go out and do a rotation with her. And she said, yes, she'd had many out of state students before, because at that point she was one of the only people, maybe if not the only person, offering that type of opportunity to students as an elective. So I had a chance to go and do the rotation. And honestly, within a few days was like, how do I make this my career? Like, this woman is a superhero. And that's cool. I loved that she viewed integrative health, and she, calls herself an integrative health pharmacist. I love that she viewed health as this like interplay and conversation between different modalities, and she didn't focus necessarily on one or another. So whereas I would say the conventional scope of medicine really focuses only on prescriptions, she was like, prescriptions are great for some people, but some people don't want to take them, and some people understand that like a statin is integral to the way that they function, but they also want to add other things to their regimen to optimize their wellness or like just improve their overall daily living or quality of life. So she stood in between this, like, these two sides that unfortunately I see in the integrative space, especially as I was looking for mentors and stuff. So many people are just so polarized in their opinions within integrative health. They're like anti-prescription, or they're like on the conventional side, like anti-herb. And I just think there has to be somewhere in between. And I think as a conventional pharmacist, or as a, Western trained pharmacist, that is the perfect place to be, is to understand that like a lot of these supplements are like cofactors in biochemical reactions, and like they play such an integral role. So it's like understanding that, but then also looking into all the other modalities of healing, health, and wellness. So talking about homeopathy, or traditional Chinese medicine, or Ayurveda, or, talking about the importance of nutrition and movement and mindfulness and therapeutic aromatherapy. And at the end of the day, it's all about what the patient wants. To me, and like what I learned through her, was that it's all about patient-centered shared decision-making. And at the end of the day, that's what we really need to think about as healthcare professionals, to be guides, to say, if you want to have the best sleep of your life, I can give you 12 or 15 options and different pathways that you can take. But as a patient, which one sounds the best to you? Some people are like, I just want to have an awesome chamomile tea before bed and ensure that I turn my lights off an hour before bed, have my red light, call it a day. Some people are like, just please give me some melatonin. Some people are willing to be a little more adventurous and try, CBD or valerian or other really great herbs out there. So it really depends on the person, and it's really just personalizing the experience so that the patient gets what they're looking for out of their overall treatment goals and what they want from their lifestyle.
Absolutely. I think what you said there is so true, is that it's all about options for patients. It's not just a one-sided, like they either have a prescription or they have an herbal supplement. They can't, that's it. It's one or the other, but we have to, integrative health is so important. And I think that people are more open-minded now, at least versus when you started with this, which I can't even imagine, people were not as receptive to this new concept. But they're going to possibly be ordering this on Amazon. So why not you be that person where you can talk to the patients? You're their trusted healthcare professional. It makes a lot of sense for you to, to be doing that. And it's so important for our patients. Absolutely.
I couldn't agree more. And it's being able to be that trusted resource. And I always say, when you're learning about these other modalities, that you don't have to be the expert in them. You just have to be able to answer the patient's questions. So if they come to you and say, oh, what do you think of CBD for sleep? Then you should have, an answer that can help a patient. But maybe instead of I think that there's a lot of discussion now of oh, you need to be the expert in all these, botanical medicines. Whereas I say as long as you can help the patient and answer their questions, that's what's key. So it's knowing these tips and tricks and knowing a few of these super important tidbits that can really help you. So if a patient comes to you and say, oh, what do you think about CBD for sleep? The first thing I do, or that I would recommend any healthcare professional do, is look at their medication list and see what medications they're on, what supplements they're on, what herbs they're on, and ensure that there's no drug interactions, because CBD is not a panacea. It's not going to solve all the world's issues, but I do think that there is a place in therapy for it, just as I think the same for prescription. So just ensuring that it's always looking at the risk versus the benefit. And I feel like that's one of the main things I took away from pharmacy school that I use every single day in every decision I make, whether it's a product formulation question or it's a one-on-one consultation with a patient or rather a customer. It's always thinking about how am I optimizing the risk benefit ratio by making sure we have the highest amount of benefit with the lowest amount of risk. And sometimes when people want to take CBD, and I've done these one-on-one consultations with potential customers that haven't purchased the product yet, they'll ask oh, this is my med list, or they'll tell me what their med list is. And after I'm done running down the med list, I'm like, these are really important medications, and you don't want to, add CBD necessarily to this because it could make the efficacy of this certain medication pretty much obsolete. And then it eliminates the point of even taking the medication if you want to add, certain herbs. So again, very patient-centric and very important to take into account all these different factors.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this is the way medicine should be, so this is so great that you're doing this.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And it's not only important that we do it and then we talk about it, but we also provide opportunities for the next generation of pharmacists to learn about the roles that they can play. So even just as simple as pharmacists having the option, or pharmacy students having the option to listen to the Pharmacy Podcast Network and listen to conversations like this, is something I wish I had when I was in school.
No kidding, right?
Yeah.
I know.
It would have been
amazing.
Goodness. And I wouldn't have felt such a black sheep trying to figure out what I'm going to do as this, weirdo in the corner versus hearing other people just openly talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I 100% agree that I think, and we didn't have what everyone has now. Now I sound like an old person, but we didn't have, podcasts and, all the social media things
or
that we
Instagram
have now.
or anything.
Yeah, I don't even think LinkedIn existed then. Yeah, no, no, it's amazing now. So I want to get into, so your products at Element Apothic. How did you get into this whole line of products? It's a beautiful website. And I do want to remind our listeners, we'll have everything in the show notes as far as how to contact you and this website and your main website also.
Definitely. Yeah. So, So, I mean, through the beauty of networking, I happened to meet my two co-founders. And I mean, I was at the point where I was doing a lot of like consultations and like, just consulting work in general for supplement brands and for health food brands. And whether it's helping to provide evidence-based education through blog posts or videos, or I was helping with actual product formulation or supplement formulation, I was getting all this, experience and finding a lot of voids in the market and really not being comfortable. I mean, there are quite a few brands I would recommend, but overall, I was pretty uncomfortable with the number of brands that were out there that weren't doing it in the right way. And another thing that I found too with like the CBD world is that, at least at the time, is that there was such a focus, and there still tends to be a focus within the CBD just industry, that products only have cannabinoids in them. And to me, then I'd be recommending these products that had cannabinoids, but then like recommending 4 other supplements to like complement them. Cause I'm like, these supplements or these other herbs will synergize with the cannabinoids. So you can take less of the cannabinoids. And I was just thinking, what if there was a way to put it all in one product, So that was that was a lot of my initial thought process. And I had been thinking about this for a while. And then I happened to meet our like 2 co-founders at the company. And so one of our co-founders, her name's Davina. She's our CEO, and her great aunt was diagnosed with quite a few autoimmune conditions. And, through the process of being diagnosed, she found out she had a lot of allergies to conventional medications and just was not given a very good prognosis and was kind of just told, modern medicine can't really help you. Like, we're so sorry, but like, this is kind of it. And at that point, she was close to bedridden and she just didn't want to take that as an answer. So she took it upon herself to learn about the world of herbs. And that also led her to learning about cannabis. And she started creating a lot of formulations that pretty much helped save her life.
Wow.
Yeah. And so she realized, like, I'm not a businesswoman, but like our CEO is a businesswoman and has like experience in that side. And she was like, is there a way that, Davina, would you consider bringing these formulations from the kitchen to the world, is kind of the way she always says it. And so
I love that.
I know. And so that was kind of like the initial, start of the company, which was like over a decade ago. And then by the time that I met the co-founders, it's really when we were taking these formulations and figuring out how we can bring them to the world, but updating them with a lot of modern science. So a lot of what I did initially is when I was initially asked to be a part of the team was as a medical advisor. And then as I took on more and more, responsibility and everything at the company, I was asked to come on as a co-founder, and now I'm the chief scientific officer. So I run all things product from, clinical development, product testing, and all of the clinical studies that we're starting this quarter. And then on the other side, it's all of the medical affairs, medical education. So being able to get in front of providers, consumers, and students and really help them learn about the potential benefits of cannabinoids, but also other herbs. And that's something that really stood out to me when she talked to me for the first time was, their formulations were not just going to be like CBD in an oil in a bottle. It was actually going to be other herbs that worked for her aunt. Yeah. And over time, her aunt was not only creating formulations for herself, but she started creating formulations for a lot of their family members and a lot of their friends and a lot of their neighborhood and community and everything. And so there were a list of like 40 plus formulations to start. And so since we've kind of used those as the skeleton and jumped off from there with a lot of the modern science and, being a part of product formulation as well as education, a part of that is like building expertise too within the company. So, not only am I an integrative pharmacist, but I'm not a physician. I don't hang out with patients every single day. I do one-on-one consultations, which I absolutely love with customers, but I don't have a chance to do that all the time anymore. So we wanted to bring in the right clinical experts to build out our medical advisory team. So I work very closely with them to evaluate whether it's monthly or every other week, like how we can push these formulations forward with some research either that they've done or research that they'll, bring to me and say, what about this ingredient? So that's kind of, the way that we've decided to move forward with the company is to really have this like medically driven CBD company, which is not really the norm right right now. I'd love to see that be the norm in like the next 5 to 10 years. But right now we're kind of at the forefront of, really putting evidence-based education and this medical oversight over formulations in a way that no one's doing quite yet.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's important also that people are, not buying CBD products and other things like in a gas station.
Yes.
It infuriates me when I see that.
Me too.
So I'm on the Element Apothic website. Now, if I am, let's pretend I am a patient, I have low libido. Since this is SexPharmD, I'll tie it in.
Yeah.
Or some products that you stand by that you would recommend for someone. And low libido can be, a result of maybe they're not sleeping, or thyroid. There's so many other things also. And it looks like, you have so many products on here also. But do you have anything that might help someone as far as that goes, or for women, to balance them out and things like that?
Definitely. So the way that the endocannabinoid system and the way that cannabinoids work with the endocannabinoid system really comes down to this idea of balance and homeostasis. And a lot of that is because the cannabinoid receptors that we know the most about, CB1 and CB2, are found in almost every single organ system in the body. So they're not like concentrated to one organ. And so that's why they really have like an indirect or direct relationship with a lot of the processes and neurotransmitter activity and stuff that happens in our body. So that's like first and foremost for just this idea of balance. I love the idea of taking cannabinoids every single day, just to help promote that idea of homeostasis within the body. And you'll see over time how that can really help so many different things, including libido. But I did want to point out too, I think that, there's part of taking it internally that, really helps alleviate and helps balance everything out. But there's also benefit with putting things on topically and how those both can work together. So I think it really depends the person and what they're interested in, what they're interested in improving. I really like our Calm Cool Collected tincture for any sort of like anxiety or stress. I love it as like, for focus or feeling like present in the moment. So that could be incredible for sex. And then I also think too, like anything with like anxiety related things, like performance anxiety is really big. So I would say like the Calm Cool Collected for that could be incredible. I would say that, it does take 30 to 60 minutes to work because you're taking it under the tongue. So you hold it under your tongue and then you let it swallow after 30 to 60 seconds for optimal absorption. So I would say like, if you're looking to use it for that reason, that just to ensure that, you're taking it with enough time beforehand would be my suggestion. With cannabinoids though, it's all about like personalizing the experience. So like maybe one time you'll take a little bit more for a different experience. Maybe one time you'll take a little bit less, but that's why I really like the tinctures, the under the tongue tinctures, because you can really it empowers the patient to figure out what kind of experience they want. But to get to that point of personalizing the experience, it takes a little bit of patience to slowly amp up the dose a little bit. So I would say, I always recommend to start with a quarter dropper. We have 2 different formulations with our under the tongue. We have a 500 milligram bottle. So that's for like 30 to 60 servings, depending on how much you take, or maybe even more servings than that. Depends on how much you need. But then we also have a 1500 milligram bottle. So it really depends on, what the patient's familiarity is with cannabinoids. So if there's someone who takes, a cannabinoid or like a CBD gummy once a week or something, then I would say that they should start on like the lower end with the smaller dose. I'm always big on like, let's go for the lower dose if possible. And we can always work our way up. So I would say like, I would start with that bottle. Whereas someone who like is a recreational smoker, and they have been trying and doing a bunch of different, CBD products, whether topically or systemically, I would say then start with the 1500 bottle, but it really depends on the person and how often they're consuming cannabinoids. And, it's not that, they were a recreational smoker in college, that was years ago, but it's more of like, what are they doing now? And what are they doing regularly now? So, that's really important. And yeah, it's just that sense of patience that's, like going through the process of trying different things. But yeah, so I would say stress and anxiety are big, like performance anxiety. I also think and I also mentioned the idea of like being present in the moment with the Comcool Collected tincture. For overall wellness, I really like our Be Well tincture. To I guess specifically answer your question is like for overall wellness and baseline, I would definitely recommend our Be Well tincture for that. And then there's also we have a lotion that's really amazing. So that could be used for massage. That could be used for recovery. So there are things like that to help amplify the experience as well.
Is that the Nourish lotion that you have?
Yeah, the Nourish lotion. Yes,
I saw that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I actually have that right here.
Oh, that's awesome.
I always keep it on my desk.
I love that. Yeah, with the tinctures, I always say, start low, go slow.
Yeah. So I always say start low, go slow, and stay low is what I add.
Okay.
Because like a lot of the time people like put, cannabinoids and, other herbs in the same category as prescriptions. And they're like, oh, if I take more, then I'll feel more. And cannabinoids have a biphasic effect. So it's actually not necessarily true. It's more of finding the right exact dose for you that works the best for you. And another thing that I also love to talk about with cannabinoids and the endocannabinoid system is that, one of the myths that's really fun to bust is, when people are exercising or doing some sort of like vigorous activity, a lot of that comes back to this release of what people think are endorphins. And it's not necessarily wrong. And actually, if you look at the biochemical cascade, there is the release of endorphins all the way at the end. So that's like where the endorphin hypothesis came from, decades ago. However, if you look farther upstream, a lot of it starts with the release of anandamide, which is an endocannabinoid. And this endocannabinoid is thought to work exactly like THC. So it binds to the CB1 receptor, which is the one found more densely in the central nervous system, and also the one associated with like providing a high. So it's like after you work out, you get this runner's high, quote unquote, which people say is to do with endorphins, which is not false, but it's more closely associated with this anandamide release. And generally during vigorous exercise or sex included, there's also this release of anandamide. So after you feel this euphoria, it could be the orgasm also. And that's really all plays together really beautifully. So it's more than just, what cannabinoids we can include into our life, into our body, into our lifestyle. It's also the endocannabinoids that we create ourselves. So it's what is called cannabimimetics. I wish I came up with the term, but I just talk about it all the time.
I wish this was in pharmacy school when I went to school, right? Like this didn't even exist.
Exactly. I mean, I hear that, like, sometimes I'm asked to give lectures and stuff. So they have like one-off lectures or this, that, and the other. But I have yet to see like a full-on, elective course or even have it be a part of the curriculum. I would love that. I'd love to teach it, but it's just so many things like this where like, it's so interesting to learn. And it also provides this bridge into understanding that like the endocannabinoid system is not that foreign or not that crazy or different than any other system, especially if we can relate it to the functionality of a lot of other systems. So, anandamide is big. And I love talking about cannabimimetics though, because a lot of people are like, oh, what if I'm not ready to incorporate cannabinoids? I'm not ready for that step yet. Then I'm like, okay, let's optimize the endocannabinoid system with a lot of other things we can do, like mindfulness in the endocannabinoid system. There are lots of studies. What about like, exercise in the endocannabinoid system? So there's a lot of other ways. There's a lot of really great like spices within like nutrition and recipes that can also optimize, like black pepper or curcumin and some of the active components there that bind to the CB1 or CB2 receptors. So, there's
interesting.
Like,
I
so
didn't
much
know
to
that.
say.
Oh,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Now, when I'm looking at this, I know what CBD is, but CBG, what does that mean when I'm looking at your labeling?
Oh, yes. So CBG, and we also have CBN in some of our products. And those, so there's actually 200 known cannabinoids. So these are all like naturally occurring cannabinoids found in the cannabis plant or the hemp plant. And so CBG and CBN are considered minor cannabinoids. I joke that they're only called minor because they're at lower percentages in the cannabis plant, not because they're minor in their like therapeutic use or potential or anything. They're just like, like all cannabinoids are like siblings. They all like hang out in the plant. They're all like related, but like they all like do their own thing at the same time. But also, I mean, they are siblings, so they can like synergize and work together when they want to. So we use CBG and CBN as minor cannabinoids that are used for certain things. So CBG, for example, I call the CBG great for like gut and glow. So it's really great for like radiant skin. So we use it in a lot of our skincare. Really great for hyperpigmentation and the less appearance of redness in the skin, and just like overall like brightness and radiance. Like I can tell if I haven't used it for a while. So I really love that. And then CBN is a bit more for sleep. That's where like all the research is like sleep. I guess also some with muscle recovery as well. So I mean, I feel like CBN's kind of taken off recently within the cannabis space, and like so many products now are like only focused on like CBN for sleep. And so that's what we have in our sleep tincture. We have our CBD and CBN combination. And it's thought to be, just as potent as THC, but without the, euphoric effect.
Yeah, no. Okay. Good. I wasn't 100% positive. I wanted to make sure I knew. And then for our listeners that are looking at this also.
Yeah.
No, this is good stuff. I mean, I've recommended it to my patients in my, sexual health coaching and therapy. And I know it's, again, there's so many different CBD products out there. It's good to give your patients options, like you said, so this is great. This is backed by research, and it's not just some bogus CBD company that you're not even sure is reputable.
Definitely.
So
I mean,
it's good. Yeah.
And like, that's one of the issues currently in the cannabis space and then the CBD space in general is that people are seeing like the possible market cap, and then they get excited and they want to start a brand, but they don't really fully understand what it means to have like the right third-party testing and what it means to have organic hemp. Like we use organic hemp in ours, and we're all about like no pesticides. We do more testing than most companies because we just want to make sure what we're giving to the patient is going to help them. And that's also why we do so many like internal studies and figuring out what's actually going to work for the patient. Because I mean, the worst thing is being the patient and then picking up a product and like spending a good amount of money on a product and then realizing like, oh my gosh, this doesn't work for me. And I mean, part of that and why we're so focused on, not only having great products is supporting that with education. And so much of what I do has to do with education, because it's just, there needs to be more discussion openly about how we can use these and how we can use these in a safe way. And that's, why we offer consultations. And actually, next month, I'm launching a course specifically through the brand. So that is going to be the first ever online course that's, self-paced and multi-module, specifically for consumers interested in learning more about, cannabinoids and how they can incorporate that into their daily life in a really like sustainable and healthy way. So that's something also we're working on. So it's like, what other types of education can we provide, whether it's Instagram lives, doing the podcast, and so many other ways that we can help reach people.
No, absolutely. That's fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
That's great. No, and I think when it relates to sexual health, we always forget. I feel like we kind of put it like on the back burner, but CBD can have a big impact on sexual health. And we forget to talk about that with patients. That's like a conversation that we miss, I feel like, a lot of the times, because pharmacists, it can be taboo for some people. They might not feel comfortable. Like that's part of the process that I've been trying to educate pharmacists and other healthcare practitioners more about having those open conversations with patients. So, of course, there's that whole theory where they get to know you, they get to like you, they get to trust you, right?
Yes.
So with CBD products, we miss that a lot of times when we're talking to patients. It's not just for pain or anxiety. Because those can be factors in your sexual health, even, so, the performance anxiety and a lot of other issues that people have can contribute to a poor sex life, low libido, or just how they're feeling in general.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Now, as far as what you've done with your consulting work also really fascinates me. Have you seen anything as far as these other companies where you've done consulting work for, as far as products for sexual health and wellness? Is there anything that you found, that kind of jumps out at you that's interesting? I know there's the horny goat weed and there's so many different things, but I'm just curious as far as like what you've seen in your practice.
I would say like with what I've done thus far, it's not really a big focus, but I do see that changing. If you look at like, trend forecasting and things like that for 23 and 24, so much of it is about women's wellness. And a lot of women's wellness is about empowering everyone to talk about their sex lives openly and to have an awesome one. So I think that I see that as a trend moving forward. And that's a lot of the projected thought from the industry. But that being said, I don't really see that as like a focus or anything right now. Yeah. And I mean, any company that I've like consulted with, they were not really creating any products specifically for that.
Isn't it interesting though? I really find that interesting.
I think it's just because of the taboo that's been around it for so many years that people are like, oh my gosh, are we going to be the one to like talk about it and put ads on Google about it? So So, I mean, but I also, I do see some companies coming out and like, at least their angle is more of like, let's do things for women's wellness. And then that is like kind of encapsulated within this idea of sexual wellness, but openly and overtly, I haven't really seen a lot of brands address sexual wellness specifically. Yeah.
I'm just curious, I'm so curious about that. So as far as if they want to order your products, can a pharmacy stock this in their pharmacy, or it's just online only? Just for personal use, or how does that work?
Yeah. So we are broad spectrum for the most part. Most of our products are broad spectrum. So that means that we don't have any THC. We have 0% THC in all of our products. So you can order them online. They also can be stocked in pharmacies. They can be in wellness centers. And so that's kind of like the differentiation. And then if you see the terminology of like full spectrum, if you see that in a pharmacy, that means that they have like up to 0.3% of THC. And then if they have any more than 0.3% THC, then you have to go to a dispensary to get it. At least in every state so far, that's how it's been. So as of now, we don't use any THC. So you can find our products, in a lot of different pharmacies and small grocery stores and things like that. But the easiest way to get it straight to your house is just direct to consumer through the website.
That's great, because that's hard to find sometimes, where you can just order it online, which is really good.
Definitely.
And from a trusted site.
Exactly. I was going to say from a trusted site's really important. Like we don't need to knock Amazon or any of those, websites necessarily, but you have to think about the big warehouses and how long product sits in there sometimes that, you might get something from Amazon and it may have already gone bad, or maybe it's already been sitting out in questionable temperatures. And you have to just think about it a little more. Like it might be, cheaper price on Amazon, but it also means that like Amazon takes such a big cut that like the company's not really getting in any of the, outcome anyway. So if ever you can buy small, I always say buy small.
I always do too. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I want to shift over to your book, The Sacred Feminine, a collection. It's called A Collection of Insights from the Higher Self.
I have it right here.
What a beautiful title. What a beautiful book cover. For those of you listening, definitely it's such a great concept. So I want you to talk about that, because I think this is really awesome.
Definitely. So also through the magic of networking, I met 19 other incredible ladies. This is kind of like during COVID and when everyone was feeling so isolated and alone and everything. And we were looking for a community. So we found one another on Clubhouse. And we had been talking about how can we work together. And there were two girls in there in particular that were talking about like they've always wanted to put together this anthology of women's stories that really talk about this idea of empowerment and living in your sacred feminine and how you define that and what that means to you. So everyone who said yes was allotted a chapter of the book. And so we all like wrote our own, stories and spins on what it means to be in the sacred feminine for us. And, of course, with like tangible takeaways for the reader to figure out, what is going to resonate with them. We have everyone on there, from people who are like, jewelry designers to healthcare professionals to real estate brokers to models, like anyone. Like there's so many different kinds of people in there. So it really is amazing, like the number of people that are in there and the number, like the stories that people have to share. Like even the chapter on the jewelry designer, she doesn't even talk about her business. She's talking about something completely else entirely. So it's amazing, like what people have to share. And this like idea of like collective thought was something that I feel like was really like missing in the positive, especially in the pandemic. So to come together and to do this together in a way and get it published is really exciting for us.
I love it. And I'm assuming did you do your own personal chapter also?
Yes, I did my own chapter. Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait to order it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I can send you the link here. Let me write it down. Yeah. I can send you the link to order it. But, and we're talking about like what it would mean to do another one. So maybe we'll do another one like next year. So we'll see. Like the process of writing a book is really incredible and really fun, but like, it's really long.
Oh yeah. It's
so if you have this like idea to like not only write it, but to go through the process of editing and then like sending it off and then waiting for it to be printed. It's like a whole thing. So, but I recommend it to everyone. It's a great learning experience. And I would recommend to anyone also like trying to find a few people to write it with, where you all bring very different perspectives, but all have this like underlying theme that draws all of it together.
No, I love this because a lot of these topics on here, like inner child healing, somatic healing, like all of these things that you touch upon in the book, it looks like, as far as these are things that I talk about with patients that affect their sexual health and wellness and just becoming more mindful about yourself. And I think this is really, really great that you did this. So yeah, absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's really great. I can't wait for the second one to come out. That'll be awesome. Yeah. So as far as I also was looking at your, the online course and, tell me a little bit about that. And I know you're doing the coaching, and then we can't forget you have your podcast too. So, so tell me a little bit about like what the course is that you're doing.
So are you referring to the Integrative Health 101 course?
The 101, yeah.
Yeah. So Integrative Health 101 was actually with my mentor, who I like sought out and did my API rotation with and did my residency with. And she and I have always talked about like how we can continue to work together. So a few years ago, or I guess it was like 2021, we decided to do a live webinar series. And, we both are integrative health pharmacists, but have very specific specialties within it, which just works so complementary to one another. So like I did 5 lectures, she did 5 lectures. We had a cohort of like 15 pharmacists and pharmacy students who were with us through this live webinar series that was a total of 5 weeks long. So every single week we had two live lectures, one from me and one from her.
Oh, great.
And so we did like the 1-hour lecture and then had a Q&A. We did case studies, all of that good stuff. It was really fun. And so as we went through it, we recorded all the sessions. And then after that, we had some people reach out being like, oh, I missed it. Is the course going to, come back soon? And so we kind of decided that we would upload it to teachable.com and have it be a, standing course where people could access at any time they wanted. So, So that's what we decided. So that's Integrative Health 101. Started off as a live webinar series, and we have all the recordings up there. And what Dr. Tarlo and I, we have decided to do is do live webinars on a quarterly basis. So everyone who's purchased the course also gets like a free, live webinar.
That's
supposed to be like a Q&A. So after you've gone through all the material and you want to chat about it and everything, then we can sit down and help with that. So that's that course. And then one of the other courses that I've been a part of that already launched, that launched in 2020. That was the first ever online course for pharmacists to learn about cannabis medicine. Mm-hmm. So that's called Cannabis Science and Therapeutics for Pharmacists. That's working with this awesome cannabis education platform called Medical Cannabis Mentor. And I helped write that course with a physician, and we launched that in 2020. So that's also available if people are interested in learning more. I'm happy to provide the link to that course as well. And then the other course that I mentioned very briefly was the consumer course. So that's something that I'm really proud of that will be coming out next month.
That's awesome. I love it. And, I really, again, with this integrative medicine with sexual health I think it's definitely necessary. Mm-hmm. I know I've even talked to patients about, so for example, like men with erectile dysfunction where they're taking Cialis, but then they also take nitric oxide, it's like just to give them more of a boost, a daily boost. I mean, it's very interesting how we can really integrate medicine and give them options,
Yes, so exactly.
I think it's really great. Yeah, no. And then as far as your podcast, you're going to be talking about Element Apothic specifically, or just what is that going to look? Have you done some recordings yet?
So I've done a few recordings. Okay. I've done like the intro one, and I've done a few others after that. And really what the focus is going to be on looking at the evidence-based perspective on the use of botanicals and cannabinoids. So what studies have been done, like for example, with cannabinoids, what type of disease states have been researched. And really like a lot of what I do, I feel like in my life is like debunk myths and stuff. So it's kind of like debunking myths, or like, kind of like myth or fact, like, is it real or not? So it's just looking at the research to see what is there, what isn't there. And I have a group of incredible interns. So that's one of the things I do through the company is I run an internship program that is for Doctor of Pharmacy students, Doctor of Medicine students, and Doctor of Nutrition and Dietetics students. So our current cohort will be done in April, but it's like every 6 months I have a different cohort that comes through, and they help me with a lot of this content creation. So a lot of the blogs you'll see like byline, like by, specific name. Those are all of our interns that really help with providing this evidence-based information. And I mean, at the end of the day, that came out of like a need or like a want that, I wish I had that experience when I was in school. I wish there was a way that I could like learn what it means to be in a startup, especially a startup with one of the co-founders being a pharmacist, and like learn more about medical writing from a consumer perspective, which is definitely something that's not talked about in pharmacy school. And then also like with this newest cohort that will be starting in late summer, like what I'm really excited about is there's going to be a full focus on provider education. So the creation of pamphlets and slide decks and different things like that can also really help. So getting more of the, almost like medical affairs experience. Whereas so far it's been more like scientific communications, more specific to like consumer education.
And it's funny you mentioned that about medical writing. That's like a whole profession that I never even knew about until recently. I saw some things on LinkedIn and I was looking and I was like, wow, this is cool. But I never thought about that. And they want PharmD, MD or DO. It's very interesting. Like we are wanted for that. It's a whole other profession to get involved in.
Definitely. And
it's
actually
involving patient and prescriber education. It's amazing.
Exactly. And that's actually, when I was a resident, that's how I made a lot of my side money, honestly, like, that's how I got into medical writing. But I found out, the hard way that there isn't really a lot of, ways of learning or getting bylines unless you find a way to like, I'm not going to say trick the system, but you find a way to get more bylines. And that's a lot of what I've learned along the way is like, how do you build a portfolio without actually having real, company experience? So that was another thing I wanted to give the students is like, for them to have bylines. So it says by their name. So every time.
That's awesome.
And I always like, that was one thing that I realized when I got into the, field of medical writing or anything really, like within trying to find a job, was like the first thing employers do is Google you. They might look you up on LinkedIn. They might look up your Instagram, but they Google you because they want to, I mean, obviously they want to check if you have some criminal record, but like also they're also interested in like, what comes up when I Google this person. And if the first thing that comes up is like a bunch of bylines by you, I mean, that looks awesome.
It looks great.
Regardless of whether or not you want to go into medical writing or you want to talk about the benefits of peppermint or whatever, your article might be for that month that I assign, like it still shows that you have this online presence as a thought leader, even as a student.
I love it. I love it. I love that you did that as a side hustle too. Everybody's got a different thing. I sold sex toys. You did medical writing.
Yeah.
I love it.
Amazing.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I love it though. That's great. But it's a whole other profession now. It's really cool.
Definitely.
That's amazing. So as just to, kind of close up this amazing discussion about integrative medicine, what would be your top? I always ask this to my listener, the people I interview. What would be the top 3 products that you would recommend? It can be from Element Apothic. It can be just from your practice for sexual health. What would be like your top 3 recommendations, or the first 3 things that you would recommend?
Okay, so the first thing I would say is that this might be a weird answer.
No, there's no weird answers here. I mean, look at what the podcast is called. It's called SexPharmD. So anything goes. There's no topic you can't talk about.
So I think like coming from an integrative wellness standpoint and, thinking about like whole person medicine and really what helps like bodies function overall, whether, you're trying to have sex or you're just trying to take a walk. Like I think that hydration is very underrated. So I always say when people ask me like my top tips, like hydration has to be one of them, because you just would be so shocked. Like if you are like the average person is dehydrated. Yep. So imagine if you just up your water intake by like 1 cup every week, like that's your goal is like, next week I'm going to drink 6 cups. The next week I'm going to drink 7. And you'll get to a point where you're like, all right, I think 8 suits me super well, or like 12 suits me super well. And then that's what you'll continue to do. But I feel like there's a sense of like mental clarity with it. You'll like, I mean, your GI tract will be happier with you. There's just so many different aspects of what hydration can give us. And it's just so simple. And it's, as long as you have access to, a filter of sorts, then you're like good to go. So, I mean, that would be one of my top recommendations. And then in terms of like getting an incredible like baseline and really trying to optimize what's called your endocannabinoid tone. So that's the functionality of your endocannabinoid system. Okay. I really love the idea of like the Be Well tincture, which is kind of like our take on the multivitamins. So it has really incredible herbs. It has cannabinoids. It has CBG, CBN, and CBD in it. It kind of has this very, very light taste of peppermint, which is really incredible. It has things like turmeric in it. Yeah. Okay. So it's really lovely. And I, especially like when it's cold out, I love to make just like a coffee and put a little bit in for like some mint. And then maybe I'll put in some cacao powder, like chocolate stevia or something, make my own like peppermint mocha. So there's a lot of really innovative ways of taking it. You can put it in, a mint chocolate chip smoothie. You can put it in just water.
Tea, like
you can,
tea
and
nice.
tea.
Yeah.
You can, I mean, and then of course the conventional way is taking it under the tongue. So there's a lot of like different ways that work that, like I know that tinctures and like sublingual things are not like the norm for most people. So I always like to say that like there are other ways of taking it, but I think that could be really incredible. And then I do love our lotion. I think our lotion
I was going to say, I like that too.
It's so great. It's like so like rich and hydrating. I mean, it's called our Nourish lotion because that's really what it does the best is it nourishes the skin. That would be my other like top product is just like a go-to, whether you use it as a massage lotion or you just use use it as like, your lotion you keep in your purse, like either or, it has just really incredible healing benefits. So that would be my other, suggestion from like an overall wellness standpoint that really just feeds into also your mindset and overall like how you'll feel about sexual wellness.
I love that. I love that you said hydration too. I feel like that gets overlooked a lot.
All the time.
And a conversation I know. And it's like a conversation I have with patients is kind of like, what does your diet look like? And do you exercise? Because that's like a huge component of how you're feeling.
Yes.
And how your body's functioning. So I think that's so important. That's great. I love it. So as far as, we'll put all this in the show notes. How can people find you? What is your contact info and all that good stuff?
Yeah, definitely. Just search my name on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with people. And, if you're looking to, learn more about cannabinoids, or if you just want to connect, and I would love to like learn more about the community and everyone that's, within the pharmacy sphere or even beyond. So yeah, please reach out and ask to connect. Would love to do that. So LinkedIn would probably be the best place to find me. I also have an Instagram presence. So that's like at Dr. Swathi with Dr. spelled out. So I can provide that in the caption. So those would be like the two ways to find me. To learn more about Element Apothic, you're more than welcome to go to our website, elementapothic.com, which we can have in the show notes. And then also it's our Instagram is Element Apothic as well. So those are the quickest, easiest ways. And then if you want to learn more about our products, there are multiple ways that you can interact with me just through the company. So I have an Ask Dr. Swathi page on the website. So that's a direct email message that comes to my inbox. So then I'm able to respond to anyone. So I respond it's a lot of questions about, like, do your products work for this? Like, what about this? Like really simple, like one-off kind of questions. But I also do free one-on-one consultations, like up to 15 minutes if you're interested, where I'm happy to hop on a call and we can chat. And then if we want to have, more extensive conversations, and I also do, more extensive wellness consults. So that's also something potentially if people are interested in.
Great. That is fantastic. Yeah. I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Swathi. I'm so happy that I've met you. And don't forget, you have your show on Pharmacy Podcast Network.
Yes, I do. So, also that. Please check that out. It's officially coming out in February. So I'm not sure when this is airing, but in February it will be out.
Yay. This is so exciting. Well, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.